The first time I saw Merritt row, he was seated alone at the far corner of the seminar table, backlit by the frosted window, flipping through his course book like he wasn't really reading it. He was older than the other students, not by much, maybe mid-20s, but there was something about his presence that didn't belong in the realm of sophomore restlessness. It was as if he'd lived another life before stepping into my classroom. I should have known he would be trouble. Not the kind that disrupts class or misses assignments. No, Merritt was the quiet kind of trouble. The kind that waits patiently at the edge of your awareness until one day you realize it's all you can think about. My name is Marla Whitaker. I've taught comparative ethics and modern logic at Havendale University for 30 years. I'm 63. Widowed. I keep a strict regimen. Tea at dawn, lecture at 10, office hours from 1 to 3, and home before the city starts to dim. I've built a life of stillness, of purpose without distraction. A neat, dependable life. Merritt did not fit. He never sat in the same seat twice, always asked the kind of questions that weren't really questions at all. If ethics are ultimately rooted in culture, then aren't we just chasing ghosts when we try to define a universal good? He asked on the second week, voice calm, eyes unreadable. The rest of the class blinked at him, silent. I adjusted my glasses, cleared my throat. We're not chasing ghosts, I said. We're chasing structure. Structure gives us tools, even when the answers are elusive. He nodded slightly, almost as if I had confirmed something personal rather than intellectual. From that moment he became more vocal, more engaged, and I began dreading, then craving, his presence. It didn't help that he started lingering after class. Never long enough to be improper, but just enough to unsettle me. He'd hover near the desk, pretending to pack up slowly, eyes flicking to mine with the faintest trace of a smile. Do you ever miss it? He asked one afternoon. I was erasing the board. Miss what? Being on this side of the table. I paused, marker halfway to its tray. I don't think I ever was. He laughed, a warm, gravelly sound that did things to my nerves I wasn't proud of. That's a good answer. I wanted to tell him to leave. I wanted to remind him that boundaries exist for a reason. But what I did instead was ask, and you? What did you leave behind to be here? He didn't answer. Just shrugged, slung his bag over one shoulder, and left with that same faint smile playing on his lips. That night, I found myself staring at my bookshelf, hand hovering over Plato, then Wittgenstein, then quietly choosing poetry instead. Something softer. Something closer to what I couldn't explain. It wasn't the first time a student had admired me. I was used to the occasional comment, the flattery, the starry-eyed intellectual idolization that faded as quickly as it arrived. But Merritt didn't admire me. He watched me, closely, like he was trying to unravel something I had spent years stitching together. 3 weeks into the semester, he stopped by my office hours with no appointment. My calendar was clear, but I pretended otherwise. I can't stay long, I said, shuffling papers. I'm preparing midterms. He nodded. I won't take your time. He leaned against the doorframe, too casual, hands buried in the pockets of his faded coat. There was a scar just under his left cheekbone, faint but sharp against his otherwise boyish face. I wanted to ask about it. I didn't. I just wanted to say, he added. Your class, it feels different. Not like the others. You don't treat answers like they're coins to be traded. It's more alive with you. And blinked. That's thoughtful of you. He turned to go, then paused. Do you believe in the soul, Dr. Whitaker? His question settled between us like dust in sunlight. I teach logic, Mr. Rowe. Not the soul. His mouth curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. That wasn't an answer. Then he left. Again. That night I didn't sleep. My home, usually a sanctuary of silence, felt suddenly too loud with memory. My late husband's chair in the corner seemed to shift under my gaze, as if it too was watching me, accusing, wondering, what was I doing? And yet, the next time I saw Merritt, I didn't flinch when he touched my elbow lightly as he passed me in the corridor. The air inside my office had a stale chill that evening, despite the October sun casting its last golden threads across the window panes. I'd stayed longer than I should have, grading papers that didn't need immediate attention. But I wasn't really working. I was waiting. For what I didn't allow myself to name. My pen paused over a particularly rambling essay on consequentialism when there was a knock at the door. Not urgent, not timid, A rhythm that had become unmistakably Merritt's. I could have ignored it. But I didn't. "Come in," I called, my voice flatter than I intended. He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him with quiet finality. He wasn't in class attire. No satchel, no dog-eared books in hand. Just a black coat, slightly damp at the edges, and eyes that held something unspoken. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said, but we both knew he had. "I was just finishing up," I replied, even though I hadn't written a word in 20 minutes. He took a step closer, then another. "I was walking by. Thought maybe." He trailed off. For once, Merritt Row didn't have words. That should have worried me. Instead, I found myself setting my pen down with an intentional slowness. "Thought maybe." His lips quirked. "Thought maybe you were still here. Thought maybe you were thinking about me." The room tilted just a fraction. My fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. "That's a bold assumption, Mr. Rowe." He came closer. "Do you deny it?" I stood quickly, forcing distance, needing air that didn't smell like his cologne. Sharp, faintly citrus, forever burned into my memory. "You're walking a line," I said. "I know," he murmured, his voice steady. "And I've never cared less about staying behind it." I should have stopped him then. I should have told him to leave, to respect the hierarchy that had defined both our roles from the start. But all I did was watch as he moved around the desk and stopped just within reach. "You think I don't know what this looks like?" I asked, my voice low, bitter. "You think I haven't calculated every consequence? Every rumor? You think I care about that?" he replied. "What I care about is this silence between us. The way it stretches and pulls. You won't name it, and I won't let it go." Something broke in me then. Not loudly. Not visibly. Just a small fracture, like the sound of ice cracking under weight. I turned away, unable to look at him. He didn't move. But his voice came again, quiet, careful. "You once said philosophy isn't about finding the answer. It's about learning to ask the right question. So here's mine." Closed my eyes. "Why are you so afraid to let someone see you?" That question hit deeper than I wanted it to. Deeper than it had any right to. "You're my student, Merritt." He laughed softly. "Only technically. I'm older than half the faculty, and you know it. That's not the point. No, the point is you think this makes you reckless. But you're not reckless. You're human. And you're allowed to want something just for you." I turned to face him then, hating the way his words landed so cleanly. He looked at me like he already knew everything I was trying to hide. Like he had known from the first moment our eyes met across that seminar table. "I'm tired," I said. "Tired of feeling like I have to apologize for wanting something real." He stepped closer, and this time I didn't back away. "Then don't apologize." There was no kiss, no touch, just silence. Heavy, fragile, electric. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I let him see me cry. No breakdown. No drama. Just a single tear that slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. Merritt reached up slowly, giving me time to flinch, to turn away, but I didn't. His thumb brushed the tear away with the lightest touch imaginable. "Reverend." He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering when the rules I had built my life around had stopped feeling like protection and started feeling like a cage. The next morning he was back in his seat, this time near the front. He didn't speak once during the lecture. Didn't linger afterward. Just nodded once as he passed by my desk. But there was something in his gaze that said, "We're not done." And I knew then, I didn't want us to be. The weeks that followed settled into a strange, breathless rhythm. Merritt never crossed the line. Not publicly, not with words or touch. But in the quiet, between my lectures, in the way he held eye contact when everyone else was scribbling notes, in the subtle rise of his eyebrow when I quoted Kierkegaard or Adorno, I felt the thread between us tighten. We never spoke of that night in my office. We didn't have to. One Thursday, as the campus quivered under the first snowfall of November, I left the lecture hall early. My voice had been shaky during class, my mind flitting too often to him. It had been a day filled with subtle tremors. His late arrival, the way he dropped his pen and leaned across the aisle to retrieve it, brushing my hand in the process, the flicker in his gaze as if daring me to react. I took refuge in the library. On the third floor, tucked behind the archives, there's a little reading nook barely anyone uses. I sat there with a book I didn't read, nursing a cup of lukewarm tea and pretending I hadn't spent the past hour imagining what his voice might sound like saying my first name, Marla, without the weight of titles or pretense. I must have dozed off. When I opened my eyes, Merritt was there, standing, watching. "You shouldn't be here," I said softly, though my voice lacked any true conviction. "You look tired in class today," he said, sitting across from me. I was worried. The audacity of his honesty always disarmed me. I blinked, trying to find some version of myself that wasn't crumbling. "I'm fine," I said. "You shouldn't follow me." He tilted his head. I didn't. Guess. And I was right. The silence between us yawned open like a question neither of us dared ask out loud. He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "When I was 19, he said, "I used to think love was fire. Burning, consuming, dangerous. And now," yes, he smiled faintly, "now I think it's still fire. But quieter. Controlled. A flame that keeps you warm instead of setting you ablaze." I swallowed hard. "Is that what this is, then? Fire?" He met my eyes. "Isn't it?" I looked away. "I used to think I was too old for this kind of foolishness," I murmured. "You're not," he said. "You're just used to being the only one holding the match." I closed my book, hands trembling. "I've spent my whole life being careful. Maybe it's time to stop." His words should have frightened me. They didn't. They felt like a door creaking open after years of being stuck. But still I couldn't walk through it. "Not yet." "You said you weren't reckless," I reminded him. "I'm not," he said. "But I'm also not afraid of the truth." We sat there for a while longer, the snow tapping gently at the tall windows, the library lights buzzing softly above us. When he finally stood, he didn't reach for me. He didn't need to. "I'll see you Monday, Dr. Whitaker," he said, his voice composed. And just like that, the distance snapped back into place. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling again, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't longing for a kiss or a touch. I was longing for the sound of his voice in the quiet. The way he looked at me like I was a secret he wanted to memorize. That was what I craved, the way he saw me. And I knew. This was no longer a question of if. It was only a question of when. The moment it finally happened was so unassuming, so casual, it almost slipped past without consequence. I had just finished my last lecture before the winter break. My voice was hoarse, and my fingers ached from scribbling final remarks across thesis drafts. Outside, the quad shimmered with soft frost. The students were filing out, some exchanging hugs, others rushing for flights or buses. The semester had ended, and with it, my brief reprieve of structure, the excuse I clung to, the rhythm that kept me from examining what Merritt had become to me. He remained in his seat after the others had gone, arms folded, gaze resting softly on the blackboard. As if the lecture had lingered inside him longer than it had in anyone else. "You're not heading home?" I asked, keeping my distance. He shook his head. "No home to rush to." There was a strange hush in the room, as though the old walls were holding their breath. "You want to walk?" I asked. The words left my mouth before I could second-guess them. He stood slowly. "I thought you'd never ask." We walked the perimeter of the campus, past old brick buildings and the low stone fence that bordered the river. It was cold but not bitter. The kind of cold that kept you alert, aware of the blood in your veins. Merritt didn't speak for a long while, and neither did I. We didn't need to. When we reached the faculty gardens, silent, winter barren, the benches dusted with snow, I sat down. He joined me, our coats brushing. "I used to come here every morning when I first started teaching," I said, voice soft. "I told myself it was to prepare for lectures. But really, I think I just needed to remember that silence can be beautiful, too." Merritt's breath clouded in the air. "You talk about your life like it's something you're borrowing. Like you're afraid to leave fingerprints on it." I turned to him, startled by the precision of that truth. "Do you want to know something ridiculous?" Yes. He nodded. "I haven't let anyone into my home in almost 6 years. Not since Alan died. Not a friend. Not a neighbor. No one." "Why?" he asked gently. "Because I was afraid someone might see the life I built after him, and think it wasn't enough." Merritt was quiet. Then, "And if I wanted to see it?" I hesitated. "Would you be kind?" He looked at me, his eyes clearer than I'd ever seen them. "I'd be honest. And careful." The silence returned, but this time it didn't feel like an abyss. Felt like a promise. I invited him over that evening. We didn't plan it. We didn't dress for it. He followed me up the steps to my small townhouse with the same calm certainty he carried everywhere. Inside, the living room was exactly as I had kept it for years. Bookshelves stacked high, a faded sofa, photographs turned inward in their frames. I hadn't realized until that moment how much I'd tried to freeze time inside those walls. Merritt moved through the space quietly, reverently, as though he understood the gravity of being let in. We made tea. We sat by the fireplace. And for a long time we didn't touch. We just talked. He told me about his years before college, the mistakes he had made, the father he had lost, the years he spent wandering city libraries pretending to be a student before he ever enrolled. I used to imagine conversations with people like you, he said. Not about love. About ideas. About how to feel like I belonged somewhere. And then I found your class. I listened, something inside me softening with each word. Eventually, I reached across the space between us and placed my hand on his. It was a small gesture. But everything changed. I never thought I would want to begin again, I said. Not at this age. Not with someone like you. He turned his hand over, threading his fingers through mine. But you do. He nodded. When he kissed me, it wasn't fevered or hungry. It was quiet, certain. Like 2 pages from different books finally learning how to share a spine. We spent the night side by side. Not in passion but in presence. His head rested lightly on my shoulder as the fire died low. I felt his breathing slow, his fingers still curled around mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone in my own skin. In the morning, he made eggs in my kitchen like he had always belonged there. He left before noon with a promise to return. Not just in word but in expression. In the calm way he moved through my doorway, as though it wasn't temporary. The world hadn't ended. No careers were burned. No secrets exploded. It was simply this. A connection that refused to be categorized. 4 months afterward we lived in that balance. Careful, deliberate, fierce in our privacy but open in our honesty. What we had wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a taboo. It was 2 lives meeting too late and still choosing to begin. And in the quiet that followed, I finally let myself believe that even forbidden love, when it is built on truth, can be a kind of redemption.